World War II occurred from the late 1930s to the early 40s and was a devastating conflict featuring belligerents from all over the world, making up two major powers: the Axis, with Japan, Germany, and Italy, as well as the Allies, with countries such as America, the United Kingdom, India, China, and others.
Although early in the war America was not directly involved, on December 7th of 1941 the bombing of Pearl Harbor occurred. This bombing featured a Japanese attack on the American naval base of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii.
Pearl Harbor was a segue into a series of Pacific onslaughts by the U.S. This was all planned to culminate in a final plan called Operation Downfall, the Allied invasion of the Japanese home islands.
In response to this Japanese attack, the Americans began to be more involved with the war in order to avoid more destruction. About 6 months later, the U.S. intercepted Japanese messages, allowing for them to decode said messages and prevent a further attack on America. This prevention is known as the Battle of Midway, occurring from June 4th to 7th of 1942. This battle is known to be a major turning point between the two major powers in World War II, as it involved America destroying 4 out of 8 of Japan's aircraft carriers. Because of the brute force America was able to apply in this battle, Japan's military was greatly set back mentally and physically. Not only did half of their aircraft carriers get eliminated, but Japan finally had to address the fact that they were not the most powerful nation.
Following the battle, the Japanese military was decimated, and the American victories continued, including the Battle of Guadalcanal in August of 1942 to February of 1943. This battle took place in an island near Australia known as Guadalcanal. Once again, this was between the Allied forces and Japan, involving an overall strong win for the Allied forces. In the early months of the battle, minor victories were divided among the two powers. However, by February of 1943, the Allies were able to overwhelm the Japanese and cause them to retreat. This victory, while having militarily set back Japan once again, also turned back what had been a string of Japanese victories and was the beginning of regaining land that the Japanese had taken.
Yet, by this point, the Japanese were far from defeated. Once again, on October 23, 1944, in the Philippines, the United States attacked what became Japan's final attempt to turn back the tide of the war in their favor. The Battle of Leyte Gulf is the biggest naval fleet battle in history. Day one of the battle occurred in the Siberian Sea when the U.S. attacked. America kept a strict surveillance on the Japanese forces throughout the long run of the war. The rest of the fleets that were not destroyed in Pearl Harbor were at the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Day 2 occurred on the Surigao Strait when the U.S. sunk 4 of Japan's naval carriers. The Japanese later began to retreat that day. Finally, on Day 3 of the battle, the Japanese were gone and the United States gained control of the Philippines. This was a horrific event for everyone, but Japan lost 10,000 soldiers. At this point, the main battles of World War II were between the United States and Japan.
Another important battle that took place was Iwo Jima, when the United States invaded the small Japanese island with 30,000 Marines on February 19, 1945. A battle that was supposed to take 1 week resulted in 36 days of heavy fighting. One of the major disadvantages to the U.S. was that the Japanese had created a complex bunker and tunnel system. This allowed a small number of Japanese soldiers to offer fierce resistance against overwhelming odds. At one point in the battle, the death toll had risen so sharply, officials questioned if taking the island was worth the bloodbath, even though the U.S. had won. On February 23, 1945, U.S. Marines had reached the peak of Mount Suribachi and raised the American flag. A few days later, on March 26th, Iwo Jima was declared secure by American commanders. Unfortunately, this was not the end of the Japanese presence on the island. Over 2,500 Japanese soldiers were killed in sporadic engagements that lasted until June of that year. The Battle of Iwo Jima was important to World War II in Asia and the Pacific because it allowed the U.S. to establish an airfield near the Japanese mainland so that they could more effectively fight them.
The United States asked for an end to the conflict by August of 1945 and received no response. At this point, America had developed the world's first atomic weapons and wanted a swift resolution to the war. It was feared that an invasion of the Japanese home islands, Operation Downfall, would result in millions of casualties on both sides. President Harry Truman decided that the use of atomic bombs would end the war quickly and warned the Japanese of their development. Japan did not believe in the bomb's existence and had not lost faith in the Japanese war effort. So they refused to stop hostilities. On August 6 of 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. Still, with no response, a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki on August 9th. After Japanese scientists verified that both cities were attacked by nuclear weapons, the Japanese government agreed to end the war on August 15th and signed a formal document of surrender with General Douglas MacArthur aboard the USS Missouri on September 2nd of 1945.
Throughout World War II, America was able to not only win with the Allies, but also to greatly improve economically due to the amount of jobs the war was able to offer. In 1940, as the war was beginning before helping supply other countries, the unemployment rate was at 14.6%. However, after the war came to a close in 1946, unemployment rates had lowered to 3.9%. With this dramatic decrease in unemployment, it is shown that because of the mass production of weaponry and supplies directed towards the war, America was able to be greatly improved economically.
Along with this, without America's help in the war, Japan would have easily been able to stay in power even by gaining more territory. Because of America's wins as Midway, Guadalcanal, and Iwo Jima, the Japanese were able to be held back far enough to keep the Allies above Axis powers. Without the United States joining the war, it is obvious that they would have not only let Japan and the Axis powers stay in power, but also that America would have gotten manipulated and destroyed from sheer military power of Axis powers. Because of the Battle of Midway resulted from America's intercepting a message from the Japanese saying that they were to attack America soon, it's shown that Japan was continuously planning attacks on the United States. Although the Allies in World War II were overall a very powerful group of countries, without the help of the United States, Japan's power would have increased immensely. Meanwhile, the United States economy would have continued to stay in a very poor state.